The night air in Manila was heavy with the scent of grilled fish, gasoline and rain-soaked earth. Streetlights flickered over rows of tricycles parked by a small karaoke bar tucked between an internet cafe and a sari-sari store. Inside, laughter and chatter filled the dimly lit room, where people sought refuge from the day's exhaustion. But as soon as the boy stepped up onto the tiny wooden stage, the noise slowly faded into curious silence. 10-year-old Raymond Cruz was small for his age, his thin frame swallowed by a hand-me-down checkered shirt. The old microphone in his hands looked almost too big for him. His bare feet clung to the stage's cracked plank, and his dark brown eyes, nervous yet glowing with something unexplainable, scanned the modest crowd. Behind him stood a makeshift banner that read "Friday Open Mic, Sing and Win 500, in bold red paint, but for Raymond, it wasn't the prize he cared about. He was here because it was his father's stage. Next up, we have little Raymond, the host announced cheerfully, though even he sounded unsure. The crowd chuckled, expecting a cute novelty act. Maybe the boy would sing a nursery rhyme or a pop tune. No one imagined what would happen next. The familiar intro of "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the bar, played from a scratched CD through crackling speakers. For a moment, Raymond's lips trembled. He clutched the small silver pendant around his neck, his father's old guitar pick worn smooth from years of music. Then he began to sing. Wise men say, only fools rush in. The bar went still. The voice that came from that small boy didn't belong to a child. It was deep, warm, achingly tender. The kind of voice that carried the weight of generations, of longing, loss, and love. It wasn't an imitation of Elvis Presley. It was Elvis, reborn through the heart of a Filipino boy who had known sorrow far too soon. A group of men playing pool stopped mid-game. A waitress stood frozen with a tray of beer bottles in her hands. Even the noise from the street seemed to hush, as though the city itself was listening. Raymond's mother, Luz, watched from a corner table, her hands clasped together. She knew this voice. It was the same voice her late husband used to sing with, full of heart, rough around the edges but pure. Before the illness took him, he used to sing this very song to her and little Raymond. The memory pierced her like a gentle blade. As the boy sang the chorus, a tear rolled down his cheek, but he kept going. The notes climbed higher, each one soaked in emotion. Take my hand, take my whole life too. People began whispering among themselves. Parang sa Elvis! Zits like Elvis! No, better. There's something different, something real. By the time he reached the final line, the entire bar was silent. And when the last note floated into stillness, there was a beat of breathless quiet before the room erupted in applause. The host looked stunned. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we've ever heard anything like that before. Raymond smiled shyly, bowing his head. He didn't expect the reaction. For him, the song was a prayer, not a performance. Every word he sang was a message to his father. Papa, are you hearing me? I'm still singing your song. Afterward, as the crowd congratulated him, someone slipped now 100 into his hand. Another offered him a free bottle of soda, and the bar owner patted his shoulder. You've got something special, Anak. Don't stop singing. But outside, under the dim glow of a streetlight, Raymond's smile faded. He turned to his mother. Mama, do you think Papa heard me tonight? Luz knelt to meet his eyes. Yes, Joe, I think he did, and I think he's very proud. He nodded quietly. The silver pendant glimmered under the light as he whispered, Someday, Mama, I want to sing on a big stage. I want the world to hear his song. His mother brushed his hair gently. Then you will, my son. But promise me one thing, no matter how big the stage gets, you keep your heart small and kind. Raymond smiled. Just like Papa. They began the walk home, their silhouettes small against the glow of the city. Around them, Manila buzzed with life, jeepneys roaring, vendors shouting, but in Raymond's heart, all he could hear was the echo of the melody he had just sung. That night, after washing up in their tiny rented room, he climbed onto his old mattress by the window. The silver pendant rested on his chest as he whispered another line of the song under his breath. Like a river flows, surely to the sea. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and rhythmic, like applause from heaven. Downstairs, Luz sat with a photo of her husband, a black and white picture of a man holding a guitar, his eyes filled with the same quiet fire Raymond now carried. She wiped away a tear and murmured, He has your soul, Ernesto. Unseen to her, Raymond had dozed off mid-hum, his voice blending with the sound of rain and faraway traffic. His small body rested peacefully, but within him burned something vast and timeless. The same spirit that once shook stages across America, now reborn in a boy from the narrow streets of Manila. Some say souls return to finish what they began. And somewhere, in the invisible space between dreams and music, the king of rock and roll smiled, because his legacy had found a new heart to live in. And this time, it came with a Filipino accent. Morning sunlight poured through the small window of the Cruz family's one-room home in Quezon City. It wasn't much, a few cracked walls, a rickety table, a worn-out radio, but to Raymond and his mother Luz it was their castle. The faint scent of rice porridge drifted through the air as Luz hummed softly, folding laundry while Raymond scrolled through his mother's old phone. Ma, he whispered, eyes wide. It's at 3 million views. Luz turned, puzzled. 3 million what? Raymond spun the phone around, showing the glowing screen. It was a video of him singing, Can't Help Falling in Love, at the karaoke bar. Someone had filmed it and uploaded it online with the title, The Filipino Elvis. 10-year-old boy with the voice of an angel. Comments flooded the screen. This kid brought me to tears. It's like Elvis reincarnated, but more soulful. Someone get this boy on America's Got Talent. Ramon blinked in disbelief. His little face broke into a grin so big it made his mother laugh. Maybe the internet is mistaken, Hijo, she teased. You just sing from your heart. But by evening, the number had doubled. By the next morning, it hit 10 million views. Reporters came. A local TV station featured him in a short segment. Neighbors began calling him Elvis Ang Tondo. Then one night, as Luz washed dishes in the small kitchen, her phone buzzed with an international number. She hesitated before answering. Hello, a cheerful American voice replied. This is Emily from America's Got Talent. We just saw your son's video, and we'd love to invite him to audition in Los Angeles. Luz froze, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. A audition? In America? Yes, Mom, we'll handle your travel and accommodation. We just need your confirmation. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked at Raymond, sitting on the floor playing with a makeshift guitar made from a shoebox and rubber bands. He looked up, curious. Who's that, Mama? She smiled through tears. Maybe it's your dream calling. 2 months later, they stood inside Ninoy Aquino International Airport. Raymond wore a donated blue jacket and clutched his father's old guitar case. The airport buzzed with noise, announcements in English, suitcases rolling across tiles, families hugging goodbye. He had never been on an airplane before. Everything felt like a movie, so much light, so many faces. Luz held his hand tightly. Are you nervous? She asked. Raymond nodded, then smiled, a little. But Papa used to say, nerves mean your dream is close. Her heart swelled. Your Papa would be so proud, Hijo. As the plane took off, Manila disappeared beneath the clouds. Raymond pressed his face to the window, eyes wide at the endless blue sky. Mama, he whispered. Do you think Elvis could see us from up here? Luz chuckled softly. Maybe he's singing along. When they landed in Los Angeles, the air felt different, cooler, brighter, full of promise. Raymond stared at the massive airport with awe. Everything was big, the signs, the people, even the sky. A friendly woman with a clipboard approached. You must be Raymond Cruz and Mrs. Cruz! Welcome to America. We're so excited to have you here. She led them to a van plastered with the AGT logo. As they drove through the city, Raymond pressed his hands to the window, watching the towering palm trees and glittering billboards pass by. He'd only seen places like this in movies. When they reached the hotel, Raymond ran to the window of their room, staring out at the distant Hollywood sign. It looked magical, like a promise written across the hills. Mama, he said, his voice trembling, it's really happening, isn't it? Luz nodded, fighting tears. Yes, my love, but remember what we always say, sing from the heart, not for fame. Raymond finished. She smiled proudly. That's my boy. That night, Raymond couldn't sleep. The glow of the city spilled through the curtains, casting silver light on his small face. He lay awake, clutching his pendant, whispering softly, Papa, are you watching me? He imagined his father sitting in the corner of the room, smiling as he used to during their evening singing sessions. In his mind, he could almost hear him say, don't be afraid of the big lights, son. Just sing like you're home. Raymond finally drifted off, dreaming of a stage surrounded by stars, his father's voice echoing beside his own. The next morning, the AGT studio buzzed with energy. Contestants from all over the world filled the waiting area. Dancers, magicians, singers, and acrobats. Raymond felt small among them. Name, a staff member asked. He replied softly. Country, the Philippines. The woman looked up and smiled warmly. Welcome, Raymond. Good luck, you're already a star back home. Those words filled him with quiet strength. As he walked through the backstage hallway, he passed posters of famous AGT moments. Terry Fator, Susan Boyle, Nightbird. He stopped at one photo of a contestant mid-performance, hands lifted toward the lights. He whispered, someday that'll be me. Luz bent down beside him. You don't need to be the best, Hijo, you just need to be true. He nodded, gripping the guitar case tighter. I'll sing for Papa, and for you. Later that afternoon, the stage manager called out, Ramon Cruz, you're next. Ramon took a deep breath. Through the heavy curtains, he could see the glowing AGT logo, the vast audience, and the panel of judges, Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel. The sight made his knees tremble. But then he felt it. The familiar weight of the silver pendant resting against his chest. He remembered the bar back home, the rain, his mother's smile. The fear faded, replaced by calm resolve. Luz squeezed his hand. Remember, Hijo, she whispered, you already have everything you need. He smiled. Yes, Mama. As he stepped toward the light, a camera followed his every move. The audience quieted, curious. Who was this small boy from the Philippines with an old guitar and eyes full of fire? Raymond looked around the massive stage and whispered under his breath, "For you, Papa, for Elvis, and for every dreamer who sings from their heart." And as the announcer called his name, the spotlight turned to him, blinding yet warm. The poor boy from the streets of Manila was about to walk into a dream bigger than he had ever dared imagine. One that would touch millions and remind the world that music has no borders, and love has no accent. The stage lights of America's Got Talent were blinding hot and alive with the energy of 1,000 hearts beating as one. The vast theater was packed, an ocean of faces waiting for the next act, cameras trained to capture every tear, every gasp. And there, standing in the center of it all, was 10-year-old Raymond Cruz, a small Filipino boy holding a guitar almost as big as he was. The MC's voice boomed next up from Manila, Philippines. "Give it up for Raymond Cruz." A polite ripple of applause filled the room. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised with curiosity. Sofia Vergara leaned forward, smiling warmly. Heidi Klum clapped enthusiastically, and Howie Mandel gave a thumbs up. Raymond swallowed hard. The stage seemed enormous, almost endless. The lights above him formed halos that blurred the audience into a haze of stars. He could barely hear his own breath. Simon's calm voice cut through the hum of anticipation. "Hello, young man. What's your name?" "My name is Raymond Cruz." The boy replied, his Filipino accent soft but clear. "And how old are you, Raymond?" "I'm 10 years old, sir." Simon tilted his head slightly. 10, that's very young. "What will you be doing for us tonight?" Raymond smiled shyly. "I'll be singing one of my papa's favorite songs, Can't Help Falling in Love." A murmur passed through the audience. Sophia clasped her hands. "Oh, I love that song." Simon nodded thoughtfully. "Good choice, and tell me, why this song?" Raymond took a deep breath. His small fingers gripped the microphone tightly. "Because it reminds me of my papa. He used to sing it before he went to heaven." The audience melted. A few people in the front row already dabbed at their eyes. Simon, his voice softer now, said, "Then we'll listen with our hearts. Take it away." The soft melody began to play, a slow, delicate instrumental version of Can't Help Falling in Love. The first few notes drifted through the air like a prayer. Raymond closed his eyes. The world around him vanished. He wasn't on a grand stage anymore. He was back home, standing barefoot on that cracked wooden floor in the Manila karaoke bar, his mother smiling from the corner, his father's voice echoing in memory. He sang the first line. "Wise men say only fools rush in." The audience froze. The voice that filled the hall wasn't just a child's, it was full-bodied, resonant, golden. There was something ancient about it, something impossibly familiar. Every syllable carried the deep, soulful tone of Elvis Presley, but it wasn't imitation. It was reincarnation, filtered through the gentleness of a Filipino heart. As Raymond sang, the camera panned across the judges. Heidi's eyes widened in shock. Sophia pressed a hand to her chest. Howie mouthed,
"Whoa, Simon."
Stoic Sharp, famously unmoved, leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Halfway through the song, something unexpected happened. The speakers crackled. The background music suddenly distorted, then cut out entirely. The sound technician panicked, waving to the crew. Gasps rippled through the audience. The theater fell silent except for the faint buzz of static. Raymond froze. The light seemed too bright. His heart pounded in his chest. He looked toward the wings where his mother stood, but Luz, her hands clasped, mouthed one word, "Sing." Raymond closed his eyes again. Then, without the music, without accompaniment, without anything but his soul, he began to sing a cappella. The purity of his voice filled the space like liquid gold. Every note rang clear, every word trembled with emotion. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." The silence around him became sacred. The audience leaned in, holding their breath as though afraid to break the spell. He sang the final chorus with tears glistening on his cheeks, his small voice carrying the weight of a man's heart. "For I can't help falling in love with you." When the last note faded into stillness, the theater erupted. The audience rose to their feet in a roaring standing ovation. The applause was thunderous, echoing off the walls, filling the boy's chest with warmth. Raymond looked stunned, his hands shook. He bowed awkwardly, unsure of what to do. As tears streamed freely down his face, Simon Cowell stood up. For a long moment he said nothing. The audience quieted, even the other judges waited. Finally Simon spoke, his voice rougher than usual. "You know," he began slowly, "I've been doing this a long time, I've heard thousands of singers. But what you just did, I don't even have words for it." The crowd cheered. Simon continued, his eyes glassy. "When the music stopped, most performers would have panicked. But you didn't just keep singing. You brought us something real. You brought heart. You brought spirit." It was as if, he hesitated, glancing up at the audience. "As if Elvis himself was standing right here on this stage through you." The crowd erupted again, chanting, "Raymond, Raymond, Raymond." Sofia Vergara wiped a tear. "You made us feel something beautiful tonight. That was not just a song, that was love." Howie nodded. "You proved that greatness isn't about where you come from, it's about what's inside you. That voice, that soul, it's from another world." Heidi smiled warmly. And that smile, oh Raymond, it's going to melt hearts around the globe. Raymond could hardly believe what he was hearing. He looked toward the wings, where his mother stood crying, her hands pressed to her mouth. She mouthed, "You did it, Hijo." Then Simon turned toward his fellow judges. "You know what? I think this is one of those moments we'll never forget." He looked back at Raymond, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "You didn't just sing a song, you reminded us why we fell in love with music in the first place." The camera zoomed in on Raymond's face, his small, tear-streaked cheeks glowing under the light, and as the applause thundered once more, a strange thing happened. Somewhere deep in the audience, a man stood up, holding an old record of Elvis Presley's Blue Hawaii. He lifted it toward the stage, as if offering it to the boy. Raymond noticed, he smiled softly. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said into the microphone, "Thank you. I sang for my papa and for everyone who still believes that love never dies." The theater went silent again, then exploded with emotion. People cried openly. Some clapped until their hands hurt, and backstage Luz sank to her knees sobbing into her hands whispering, "He did it, Ernesto. Our son did it." That night, the clip of Raymond's performance went viral across the world. Headlines read, "10-year-old Filipino boy channels Elvis on AGT and moves Simon Cowell to tears." But for Raymond, none of that mattered. As the cameras turned off and the stage lights dimmed, he looked up toward the dark ceiling of the theater and whispered softly, "Thank you, Papa. Thank you, Elvis." And though no one could see it, in the quiet of that great hall, it felt as though a warm breeze brushed past him, a whisper from another world. The king's soul hadn't returned for fame, it had returned for love, and it had found the perfect voice to carry it forward. Confetti still shimmered faintly on the America's Got Talent stage as the echoes of applause lingered in the air like a memory refusing to fade. The audience was still standing, wiping tears, cheering the name of a boy who had come from half a world away to remind them of something simple yet profound. That music was never about fame, but about heart. 10-year-old Raymond Cruz stood motionless at center stage, blinking in disbelief. The roar of thousands surrounded him, yet all he could hear was his own heartbeat and his mother's voice in his head. "Sing from your heart, Hijo." He had done it. He had sung for his father, for his people, for every child who had ever been told their dreams were too big for the world they were born into. But he didn't know yet, that the most beautiful moment of his life was still seconds away. Simon Cowell rose slowly from his seat. The man who had built a reputation as the toughest, most unsentimental judge in entertainment now stood with tears glistening in his eyes. The audience hushed, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Simon stepped forward, resting his hands on the table. His voice, when he finally spoke, was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Raymond," he began, "I've been doing this show for almost 2 decades. I've seen stars, legends, incredible voices, but what I saw tonight wasn't just talent, it was truth." Raymond's small chest rose and fell as he listened, barely able to breathe. Simon continued, "When that music stopped and you kept singing, you showed the world what real musicianship and courage look like. You reminded us why we all fell in love with music in the first place." He paused, the emotion thick in his throat. "You, not as an impersonation, but as kindness, humility, and soul." The audience erupted in cheers. Raymond's eyes widened as he met Simon's gaze. It wasn't the stare of a critic anymore, it was something almost paternal. Simon looked down at the golden buzzer, his hand hovering over it. The theater gasped. He looked back at the boy. "You said you sang this for your father. I think he's listening right now, and I think he's very, very proud." Raymond's lips trembled. Simon's voice broke into a smile. "I think the world needs to hear you again. So for your father, for Elvis, and for every dreamer watching this moment." He slammed the golden buzzer. The theater exploded in gold. A blizzard of shimmering confetti rained down from the ceiling, reflecting the stage lights like stars falling to earth. Raymond froze for a heartbeat, then covered his face with his tiny hands as tears poured down his cheeks. His mother, watching from backstage, fell to her knees. Luz sobbed openly, her hands trembling as she pressed them to her heart. "Aw, thank you, Lord," she whispered between tears. "Thank you." The crowd's cheers turned into chants of "Rahman, Rahman!" as the boy stood there, bathed in gold. The moment seemed to stretch forever. Simon's eyes softened. "Come here, Raymond." Raymond hesitated, then ran across the stage into Simon's arms. The crowd roared. Simon hugged him tightly, whispering something that only the boy could hear. Raymond nodded, still crying. When they pulled apart, Simon said into the microphone, "You've just given the world something special tonight. Never forget, humility and heart will always outshine fame." Sofia Vergara, her eyes red from crying, leaned into her mic. "You made everyone here remember what love sounds like, sweetheart. That was pure magic." Heidi Klum dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "And that smile, you could light up the entire city with it." Howie Mandel grinned through tears. "You just sang your way into history, little man." As the confetti continued to fall, the host, Terry Crews, walked onto the stage beaming. Ladies and gentlemen, Raymond Cruz from the Philippines, our newest golden buzzer. The audience rose again, clapping and cheering until the walls shook. Raymond, overwhelmed, could only bow again and again, clutching his silver pendant close to his chest. In that moment, under the cascade of golden light, he whispered a silent prayer. "Papa, this is for you." The camera zoomed in on his face. Small, tearful, radiant, it captured something pure, something eternal, the look of a dream fulfilled, the face of a child who had turned pain into purpose. Backstage, after the lights dimmed and the crowd's cheers faded into the hum of equipment and footsteps, Raymond and Luz sat together on a black couch. The golden confetti still clung to their hair and clothes. "Mama," Raymond said softly, his voice trembling, "I can't believe this is real." Luz smiled through her tears and brushed a piece of confetti from his hair. "It's real, Hijo, but remember, this isn't the end. It's the beginning." He nodded, looking down at his father's pendant. "When the music stopped, I thought it was over. But then I remembered what Papa always said, if you sing from love, even silence will sing with you." Luz's eyes filled again, she took his hands. "You did more than sing, my son, you healed hearts tonight." Just then, a staff member entered, carrying a stack of letters. "These just came in from the audience, Raymond," she said, smiling. "People wanted you to have them." Raymond opened one carefully. It was written in shaky handwriting on old stationery. "Dear Raymond, I saw Elvis perform when I was 16 years old. I never thought I'd feel that same magic again. Tonight you made me feel it. Thank you for reminding me that the King's spirit, and the beauty of kindness, never die." Raymond held the letter to his chest. "Mama," he whispered, "I think Elvis was watching too." Luz smiled. "Maybe he was singing harmony." They laughed softly, the sound gentle and light. Later that night, as they walked out of the theater, the streets of Los Angeles glowed with neon light. A few people recognized Raymond and stopped to shake his hand or ask for a photo. He smiled shyly at each one, thanking them. When they reached the hotel, he looked up at the vast sky full of stars. "Mama," he said, "strange. The stars here look the same as in Manila." "That's because dreams don't belong to any one country," Luz replied, wrapping her arm around his shoulders. "They belong to those who believe in them." Raymond looked thoughtful. "Then maybe the music's the same too, no matter where you sing it." She nodded. "Yes, music speaks the language of the soul." Up in their hotel room, Raymond stood by the window, still in his stage clothes, still clutching the silver pendant. Far below, the city shimmered like a field of gold. He thought about his father, about the bar in Manila, about the night it all began. He smiled faintly and whispered, "We did it, Papa. We really did it." And as he turned off the lights and climbed into bed, a quiet peace filled the room. The golden confetti he had brought home from the stage lay scattered on the bedside table. Small, shining reminders of the moment when a poor boy from the Philippines brought a legend's soul back to life. But more than that, he had brought hope. Hope that no dream is too far, no voice too small, and no act of love ever forgotten, because sometimes, it takes a child with nothing but a song in his heart to show the world that greatness isn't about where you're from. It's about what lives inside you. And on that golden night, the world remembered. The moment the golden buzzer was pressed, time seemed to stop. Gold confetti burst from the ceiling, cascading like sunlight over Raymond. The sound of the audience's roar filled the arena, yet for him, it was as if the world had gone silent. His small hands trembled, his breath caught in his chest, and tears spilled freely down his cheeks. The lights above burned warm and bright, but inside him, a light far greater had just awaked. Simon Cowell was the first to stand. He rarely smiled so openly, but now, his eyes were soft, glistening. Beside him, Sofia Vergara clapped with both hands raised high, and Howie Mandel wiped at his eyes with his sleeve. The audience, thousands of people, were on their feet, shouting, crying, holding up phones to capture what no camera could truly capture. The rebirth of a legend through a humble Filipino soul. Raymond fell to his knees on the stage, overwhelmed. Gold paper fluttered around him, sticking to his hair and his damp cheeks. Somewhere in the audience, Luz screamed his name, "Ramananak!" Her voice trembling with pride and disbelief. She had traveled across oceans for this moment, and now, watching her son bathed in gold, she knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Raymond looked toward her and mouthed, "For Papa." Simon finally spoke, his voice breaking through the cheers. "Ramon, I've been judging talent for decades, and I can tell you this, I've never seen anything like you." The boy wiped his tears, still clutching the silver pendant that hung over his chest. Simon continued, his tone softer, more reverent. "You didn't just sing an Elvis song. You brought his soul back. It's as if, for a few minutes, the king himself was standing right here, alive again through you." The audience murmured, nodding, agreeing. There was something unexplainable about the performance. Raymond hadn't just mimicked Elvis, he had channeled a feeling, a raw, spiritual connection that made every person in that theater feel they were in the presence of something divine. When the confetti settled, Terry Crews ran to the stage, lifting the boy into his arms. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the one and only Raymond Cruz. The cheers thundered again. Cameras zoomed in on his tear-streaked face. The image would soon be all over the internet. When Elvis Presley's soul returned on AGT, and he's Filipino. That night the clip went viral. Within 24 hours, it reached tens of millions of views. People around the world, Americans, Filipinos, Europeans and beyond, watched the little boy who sang with a spirit centuries old. Comments flooded in. I'm not crying, you're crying. This kid is pure soul. Elvis lives through this boy. There's something heavenly about this performance. Filipinos have the heart of music. What a gift to the world. By morning, Raymond's name was trending globally. Talk shows invited him for interviews. Elvis fans in Tennessee, Las Vegas, and even Memphis wrote open letters praising his authenticity. A famous Elvis tribute artist tweeted, "For the first time, I feel like I've met the king again, and he's a 10-year-old from Manila." But amid the fame, Raymond remained grounded. When a journalist asked him backstage how it felt to be called the new Elvis, he smiled shyly. "I'm not Elvis," he said softly. "I'm just Raymond. I just wanted to sing my papa's song." The journalist blinked, taken aback by the humility in his voice.
"But you brought people to tears!"
Even Simon was crying. Raymond looked down at the silver pendant and said, "I think music can bring people closer to heaven. Maybe for a little while tonight." Everyone felt that. After the show, Simon approached Ramon and Luz backstage. He crouched down to meet the boy's eyes, his tone unusually tender. "You know, Ramon, I think your father must be watching over you." Ramon nodded. Simon smiled gently. "He's more than proud. You made all of us believe again, in music, in soul, in something real." He paused, his voice cracking slightly. "Thank you for reminding the world why we listen." Luz, standing beside her son, could hardly speak. She placed a hand over her heart and whispered, "Thank you, sir, for believing in him." Simon shook his head. "Noam, he made me believe." Weeks later the finals came. Raymond didn't win the entire competition. But he didn't have to. His performance had already done something far greater. It had touched millions of hearts around the world. After the finale, he and his mother visited Graceland in Memphis, where a special invitation awaited them. The Elvis Presley Foundation had heard his story and wanted him to sing one song in front of Elvis's mansion, "If I Can Dream." As the evening sun dipped behind the white columns, Raymond stood on the small outdoor stage. Tourists gathered quietly. The air shimmered with warmth and reverence. He took a deep breath and sang, "There must be lights burning brighter somewhere." His voice carried across the courtyard, soaring through the Tennessee air, rich and full, echoing off the mansion walls. Some of the older visitors wept openly, clutching each other's hands. For them it felt like a circle had closed, like the music had finally come home. When he finished, a hush fell over the crowd. Then came a single clap, then another, until the sound of applause filled the night like thunder. Raymond looked up at the stars and whispered, "Papa, and maybe even Elvis, thank you." His mother joined him, wrapping her arms around him as the crowd continued to cheer. The pendant around his neck glowed faintly in the soft light, a symbol of legacy, of love, and of the timelessness of music. Months later, back in Manila, Raymond returned to the same karaoke bar where it all began. The banner had faded, the tables still wobbled, but the room was alive with laughter and warmth. He stepped onto the same small wooden stage. Now wearing shoes for the first time, his mother sat in the same corner seat, smiling through tears. The microphone squeaked as he adjusted it, and he looked out at the small crowd. "I want to sing this for everyone who ever believed that music can heal the heart," he said. And then, softly, he began again. "Wise men say, only fools rush in." The people in the bar fell silent, just like that first night. But this time, they weren't just listening to a boy. They were witnessing a miracle. A voice that had crossed oceans, carried memories and connected souls. When he finished, the applause came like a wave, gentle and sincere. Raymond smiled, bowed, and whispered under his breath, "The soul lives on." And somewhere, beyond the reach of cameras and applause, perhaps in a place where music never dies, two spirits smiled, one wearing a white jumpsuit, the other holding a guitar, both proud of the boy who had kept their flame alive. Because sometimes, the greatest souls don't vanish, they simply find a new song to sing.